All right, everybody, welcome back to Canada Hoops. It's your boy, Maddie. Thank you for your continued support. Please keep downloading and sharing us. Hit us up on YouTube. Check out our channel there. Hit us up on Instagram and X.com. We are talking the senior men's national team for Canada basketball as they have moved to 4-0 in Group B of the FIBA World Cup qualifying and went 2-0 in window two with wins against Puerto Rico and Jamaica. And if we're going to talk the senior men's national team for Canada basketball, no better guy to have join us again. He is Jonathan Chen. He writes for the Raptors Republic, and he is their Canada basketball guy. Chen, man, appreciate you always doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on once again, Maddie. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it, man. It's been nice to chat again and reconnect, and we have a little bit of senior men's national team stuff we can talk about, which is always fun. And yeah, as I mentioned, 2-0 in window two puts them at 4-0 in the group. The first game against Puerto Rico goes into overtime. They win 96-85 behind Marcus Carr's career high 35 points. I think that puts them third all time in a senior men's national team game for scoring. Obviously, Dylan Brooks first with 39 in the World Cup in 23. But let's just talk about that game, Chen. PR and that matchup playing there, and wasn't a great game overall for the Canadians, but they get it done. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the start of the window there, man.
Yeah, I think for some like background context, Puerto Rico was a team that in the first window they suffered kind of two big, maybe surprising losses to Jamaica. So this is like the favorite to be the second or finish second in the group, and they started the first window um, with two losses. So I think it was pretty clear that with the roster that they were bringing in this time, that they were desperate for some wins, and they really started out really well. They didn't have their best EuroLeague players as well, but or even like their NBA guy like Jose Alvarado who was at the AmeriCup, but they brought a lot of guys who were on the AmeriCup team. George Condit, Ismael Romero, those guys, those two bigs in the middle, and yeah, I think it was going to be a tough game, especially at home. And I think the way Canada and the senior men's team kind of navigated the hostile environment, I think was quite impressive. And yeah, I think I tweeted it out before the game started that this was kind of going to be the start of the Marcus Carr era with the Winter Core. And what do you know? He has like one of the all-time great performances in a Canadian jersey, and I think that was just a great win on the road from the Winter Core. Great execution down to stretch when they needed to win, and they it was just a great win overall. Despite kind of seeing some struggles, you can't ask for something better than that.
Yeah, I thought it was obviously great that Marcus could obviously play well, but I know he's had a pretty solid year overseas, and it seemed like kind of a continuation of that. As he seems like a very confident player right now, and knowing I think that he was gonna be the guy to lead the team at that point guard position with Trey Bell Haynes injured and not available, and TBH has put in a lot of time and with the program. He I mean, heck, let's not forget he was part of the World Cup team in 23 and a key guy for the winter core group, if you will. So, maybe the torch has been passed to Marcus, and if that is sort of the mindset, it seems like he embraced it, and I think he was ready, obviously, and willing to take the keys from Nate Mitchell to get it done. Just an all time great game for anyone with the senior men's national team. Did it like did the struggles at times kind of surprise you? I know Wilcher was the next highest guy with 18 points, but and it is a tough environment to go play in. But was there just some maybe surprises throughout the game for you as you were watching it?
Yeah, I think one of the big kind of swing factors in that game was Puerto Rico's kind of 3-point shooting.
Okay.
Canada, they brought a lot of shooting for this window, a lot of really elite shooters in their careers in Europe, and that didn't kind of show up or manifest in the first game. They're as a team, they're 7 for 27 from three.
Right.
And they get outscored by 7 3-pointers by Puerto Rico. That's like 21 points, right? So that's a big margin, especially on the road. And I think, I think part of it was definitely there's a lot of like hot shooting. And I mean, I have to rewatch the game to figure out all or how many defensive breakdowns there were. But, I think there were some maybe nitpicks in my opinion where, Canada went into a zone defense and gave up kind of open threes to certain guys who were shooting it really well in that game specifically. So I think that was maybe one thing that was, sometimes you can't really control 3-point variance, and you still got to find ways to win, and that's what the good teams do. But I think one of the bigger surprises for me was just how well, and I think this is also where we might touch on this in the Jamaican game as well, but how well Canada played with a smaller front court.
Right.
They didn't bring a lot of bigs this time due to a lot of injuries or, different players not being available. And that was a big concern for me coming into this window. Bediako, Wilcher, and Yankuch being like kind of the only bigs on the roster. And yeah, I think especially against Puerto Rico, which is a really big physical team, especially with their kind of two bigs that they always play, Romero and Condit. I think Canada did great. They outscored Puerto Rico in the paint 50-24. The rebounding battle actually ended up being even. So I think that those were kind of two. If you would have told me that Canada coming into the game would lose a 3-point margin by that much, I would have thought like 90% chance that they're going to lose that game. So
Right.
The fact that they kind of gutted it out, super impressive. But yeah, and then definitely I think Marcus Carr, I think when he was playing at the AmeriCup this past summer, he was super impressive. And I think that's another big reason they won there.
No, well said. I thought, like, obviously Marcus, kind of really feels like he's grown into his own as a pro and where his game is at and his career's at. So it's shone in these two games in this window. And it's interesting, the size or lack of, and always that aspect for the senior men's national team for Canada basketball. Like, it didn't rear its head for them in this window when, it had the potential to, because we were missing guys for injuries and availability. So it's nice to see that they could overcome that, like you said. And, they did bring the shooters in this window for this roster to sort of try to balance it out if it came to that, but in that they didn't necessarily have to rely on the shooting as much. And I thought it was interesting in the second game against Jamaica. I know you were all over it. You were big on how they were handling Kofi Coburn there. And because of the lack of size, Canada won that game 97-81. Again, Carr led the team. He had 17 points. Wilcher was 16. And with the shooting aspect kind of coming into play and being more of what they thought they were going to bring and need, Cash Robertson had 15 off the bench. He was a nice spark. He was 3 for 6 from 3. Just one thing real quick. It was cool. A lot of the Canadian players talked about it, especially post-game, and you could see stuff on social media. They had family there, how the guys with Jamaican heritage and descent, how special that was for them to play there and represent both countries in a sense, if you will, and family. So, just touch on Jamaica, if you will, Chen, and just maybe the difference in both games, because it was obviously more of a dominant performance for Canada versus Jamaica.
Yeah, I think when you're playing Jamaica, the head of the snake, if you will, is Kofi Coburn. He's been an absolutely kind of just dominant physical force so far in the windows. Just absolutely dominated Puerto Rico in the first window, and big reason why they won both games. And even I think against the Bahamas earlier in this window, again, just physically dominant. He's just so big and so strong as like a big man. Like, he's standing beside Bediako and he just looks so much bigger. even though they're like roughly the same height or, similar heights. And so I think that really is the focal point for this Jamaican team. And all of the focus, or I guess the majority of the focus, whenever you're game planning, is going to be how to stop such a big physical force like that. And coming to the game against Canada, he was averaging like 19.7 points per game, and the job that the coaching staff and the game plan that they kind of put into place, and then the players executing it, it was just, there's no notes. I think Coburn finished with just 8 points, 3 for 10 shooting. A lot of it was at the free throw line. The one place that it's really hard to contain him because he's such a great player is like he got 8 offensive rebounds, which is still really impressive. But I think overall, Canada kind of almost turned him into like a destructive force for Jamaica because he was definitely frustrated a lot in the first half. They were doubling on a lot of his post-ups whenever he started like dribbling to attack. They started doubling. There's a lot of wrapping him so that if he's going to go up for a shot, make sure that you foul him so that he's not going to the free throw line as best as you can.
Right.
And I think the job that Charles Bediako did as kind of the primary defender was just spectacular. I think it's everything you can ask for from Charles Bediako on the defensive end. And then, on the offensive end, I thought coming into this game that there was going to be an opportunity to kind of exploit Coburn's lack of foot speed and mobility, and also a little bit of lack of conditioning as well. And we saw that like they, with Carr, with Wilcher, pick and roll, pick and pop. They hunted a lot of kind of like pull-up threes with Cassius Robertson. And so much so that like, I think in the second half, Coburn started like hedging a little bit and showing on playing at the level instead of like his normal like deep drop in the paint. And, that just ended up meaning that he would have to kind of play on the perimeter. Then he gets into foul trouble, fouls out with like 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So I think just overall, it was just a fantastic game plan against him. And once you neutralize the best player on the team, it's a lot easier for Canada to kind of dominate.
Yeah, Nate Mitchell post game, like him and Marcus were at the podium again, same as after the Puerto Rico game, and Nate talked about like, once we could get him in a little bit of foul trouble, they really wanted to hunt him and attack him, right? And that's what any good team would do, and any good coaching staff would do. And if that was the case for a Canadian player, other teams would do the same. So it worked out for them, and they really put him in tough situations to exploit him. And I think they were obviously happy with the result to win against Jamaica and go 2-0 in the window, but it seemed like more of a complete effort and more of what they were trying to do. And I liked how Wilcher coming back into the program in the previous window has kind of really become a leader, rallying the guys. I think you mentioned it on X. He was just like in a timeout, like, "Hey, we're coming in too nonchalant." That's nice to see that leadership from him. He's played a lot of great basketball. Anyone really surprised you in terms of play? Whether it was just a good surprise or maybe some disappointment between both games. I mean, obviously Marcus was really their best player. He led the way. Obviously not going to beat Puerto Rico without him, but just maybe some roster, surprises that you liked, or a little bit of underwhelming play, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely Marcus Carr is kind of like the first star of this window. Yeah. I think his ability to just kind of beat his defender, drive to the rim, collapse the defense, and then either finish at the rim or get his teammates involved is something that the Winter Core doesn't have or hasn't had in a long time. And that's not to take away from like Trey Bell Haynes at all, but they're different point guards, I think, and they're different kind of players. And I think it's a lot easier when your point guard's able to beat guys off the dribble consistently and so cleanly.
Right.
And so it was good. It was good to see that kind of translate from the AmeriCup which I think that's kind of really where Marcus Carr started kind of coming along for me, and where I could kind of see this future where he was going to be the point guard of the winter core moving forward. And yeah, I think I really liked the way he played and approached both of these games. Really just down the stretch, he kind of basically took over the offense. And so that was really good to see, especially in a high leverage situation. And I think the other guy that I really enjoyed watching was Charles Bediako.
Yeah.
I think, the offense it's still a work in progress. The free throws they're tough to watch. They're loud misses, I would say.
Right.
But I think he's like just a special defensive presence on this team. And the way he's able to kind of contest shots at the rim and basically put a lid on anywhere near the restricted area when he's in the game, super impressive. And, I think he's had a lot of athletic physical development. I remember watching him maybe coming up during his time with the junior national team, and it felt like he always had really heavy feet or he was not the most coordinated. And I think this window and the window before that kind of balance has really been much more prevalent in his game. And, he's obviously the hot topic right now with the NCAA eligibility. So, yeah, I think he's definitely going to be one of the winter core kind of key players moving forward. I really like the way he played, especially against Kofi Coburn. I think he just did an amazing job. And I guess I wouldn't say I was like super disappointed in any of these guys. I think the window is so short, it's hard to really gain rhythm a lot of times. But
yeah,
I think Nate Darling, who's had a fantastic season, I think, when he's been playing and healthy, because he had a couple injuries over in France and I think the Basketball Champions League. I think he's always, at least with the Canadian national team, the 3-point shooting hasn't translated as well as we know his kind of reputation is. And he got it a little bit going in the Jamaica game, which was nice to see. But I think in both games, I thought that he played a more limited role than I would have expected coming into it. And maybe that's just something that he needs to kind of gain more familiarity with the national team. But I think, and I wrote about this in the America Cup, but I think the way his shooting form it's a little bit slower than a lot of really elite movement 3-point shooting threats. Like I think Andreas Obst on Germany, if Gordy Herbert kind of wants to use some of those principles, that release is like lightning quick. And with Darling, it's more of like a load up where he has to like catch and then bring it up. And I think that kind of limits his ceiling with this national team, at least in the summer core. But yeah, I think at this winter core level, I think I expected a little bit more coming into the window. And he's definitely a player that's capable of exploding for like 30 points with 6 threes on a night. So I think it'll happen someday with the national team, but still kind of waiting for another one of those big performances from him.
I always think it's interesting, like when the rosters, we're waiting for them and we want to kind of dissect them and, the player availability in the pool that, they're working from is growing and growing like that. I wanted to touch on that kind of in a little bit, but you try to do a breakdown maybe and kind of see where guys are going to fit in and contribute. And obviously there's your starters and they're going to stand out for the most part. And I think like you said, you touched on it, you hit it on the head, man. Like it's hard in 2 games in a window to get some rhythm, maybe get some continuity, like in minutes and in your role. And a guy like Nate Darling probably figures like, I'm here, I'm a gunner, and that's why I'm here. And I don't know if it's a little added pressure because he knows that's his role. So if the shot is there and he not only got to look to take it, but he's trying to make it every time, obviously. So it's just there's limited samples of it at times. There's other guys you would think typically would maybe play more, but Nate Mitchell's trying to feel out the game and the situation. And because overall I thought this was a pretty good roster, pretty cool roster, and a lot of talent. Is just not everyone's going to get the minutes, and maybe they typically would in other situations. So I think it's very telling that, yeah, like to get some continuity and get some rhythm in 2 games is very hard. And I agree with you. I don't think anyone was really a disappointment. You just maybe thought there'd be a little more production in times, but again, sample size is small. And um, what do you make of, like, we had some new guys kind of pop in on this window, um, the depth of the program to have this whole winter core, and these guys really help get the qualification into a really good spot. Um, you know, what's your take on the depth at this point? It's something we've talked about for a few years now, obviously leading up to the last World Cup, but to be able to really lean on guys, bring Cassius Robertson back, who was a big part of the 23 World Cup qualification. Tommy Scrub was back in this window. Um, you know, what do you imagine conversations around the program are like for them with Rowan and his staff, and just saying, okay, we've got a chart and a catalog of everyone. Who can we lean on? Who do we think will really help in this window? Like, what do you think the mindset is for the program with the depth and where it's at? Because it seems, I don't want to say better than, say, um, 3-4 years ago. Um, it's different, and maybe in a good way. I just wonder what your thoughts on the depth are, man.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, we're kind of seeing like the trickle down byproduct of like the golden generation, as a lot of people will say, with this explosion in Canadian basketball talent. I think a lot of this generation has started aging from, the collegiate days, and then a lot of these players also initially, most often, they start their careers kind of chasing NBA or G League opportunities, and
Yeah.
then finally kind of make the jump over to Europe. So there's maybe always like 4 or 5, 6 year lag before we kind of see some of these guys at least get to Europe and become available for the national team. So like for this window, somebody like Nate Darling, something like that, Charles Bediako.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a good time for the senior men's national team as a program as a whole in terms of the talent pool. We're seeing like the FIBA game is always kind of improving in the Americas. It's the other nations are always improving as well.
Right.
I think, even this time around, I think the Bahamas, I think in Toronto, they had only lost to Canada by 6.
Right.
Jamaica's only losing by 16 to Canada. So it's like a lot of these teams are improving as well. And I think Canada does have a bit of a tougher group here, but the world is kind of improving. And with that also is Canada's kind of player pool and talent pool. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just such a luxury to have so many different options to go through. Like we mentioned off the top, like Trey Bell Haynes, who's been kind of the staple since the 2020, was it like 2021 AmeriCup or 2022 AmeriCup now?
Yeah.
He goes down with an injury, and then, you can slot right in Marcus Carr and Keza Kajami-King, who's been kind of also a winter core vet as well, and has had a really great European career overseas. That's something that's just so valuable. And I think it's definitely become a lot more like plug and play, with kind of trying out new players in different roles, and then also bringing back guys who have proven kind of pedigree, like we've seen Cassius Robertson, Kyle Wilcher coming back into the fold.
Yeah.
I imagine that's like definitely some kind of agreement with those guys who have that pedigree to say, we're going to give you guys a shot at this summer core team as kind of complimentary guys when we go to the World Cup, go to the Olympics.
Right.
Especially with Wilcher, I'm pretty sure like he's had conversations with Gordy about that. And I think, he has a valuable skill set with shooting. So that helps as a complementary player. So I think just in general, I like the kind of professionalism and the ability to execute in all of these windows back and forth, back to back and back to back. I know the AmeriCup was a bit of a disappointment, losing to Argentina in the semis, but by and large, I think over the past few years, the senior men's national team is definitely growing and kind of reaching that kind of perennial contender status that I think Canada's NBA talent player pool might suggest we have. So that's definitely impressive. And like I mean, we even saw like in this window, America lost to the Dominican Republic, and it
Right.
wasn't even like the Dominican Republic's like A team. They had a lot of EuroLeague guys who weren't there as well. So it's like the fact that Canada continues to produce wins in these windows, I think, is definitely an important factor and a key factor showing the depth of the talent pool increasing.
Yeah, with your point, which I love about everyone else is improving too. Like going with that, I think Rowan Barrett, everyone involved, the coaching staff in these NBA off season or in season windows, winter windows, if you will. Um, they've really done an excellent job of cultivating the relationships and the communication with guys they think they will need and want to be a part of this. And the guys have embraced that. They've sacrificed, they've committed. So everyone deserves a lot of credit on both sides, the program and the players and the coaches, because I think they've recognized they've needed to lean into that um, to make this possible again to qualify. And with some new guys jumping in, bringing some more veteran guys and stalwarts back. The guys have been wanting to do that, and I think that really probably comes from Rowan and his staff down, and just that effort to keep communication open and cultivate that. I wanted to ask you about Kerr Young Kook. I hope I said that right. My gosh. Kind of an energy guy, but he was kind of fun to watch rim to rim. I know he's played in the CBL a lot, but what did you just make of his limited role there? Because I thought he was an interesting name on the roster, and he provided a little punch there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this was probably his first meaningful minutes with the senior men's national team.
Yeah.
I think he had played with the first edition of the Global Jam team that also Nate Mitchell had coached.
Right.
So yeah, I think again circling back to kind of building a culture throughout this like senior men's program. Yeah, I think he was really great in his limited minutes against Puerto Rico. I think Charles Bediako, as good as he was this window, he got into a little bit of foul trouble in the first half against Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And yeah, Curry Yankuchi kind of came in really with a lot of energy and almost kind of like a chaotic kind of energy where he was jumping around, maybe jumping too often biting on some pump fakes, but he was like flying down the court. And so
great athlete. He's a great athlete, man.
For sure. Yeah. And for a big, there's only so many things you can control, and like your energy and your hustle and your like work rate is something that's definitely in control. And I think that's, it was super impressive to see that. And I think, the second game against Jamaica, he kind of had a smaller role, but that's what these windows are about. When you're called upon, you step up to the moment, meet the moment, and play well in whatever role that the coaching staff kind of needs you to perform in. And yeah, I think he did great. I think probably if Thomas Kennedy isn't hurt, that's probably usually the role that he slides into. But again, and he's kind of played that role of like super sub and like change the complexion of the game in these last few years. I think going back to I think the Mexico game for the America Cup qualifiers. So seeing Kerr kind of slide into that role was super impressive. And I think great to really see the depth of the talent pool shine.
Yeah, it's always cool. Like we said, they kind of put a camp roster out, and it's like, oh wow, that's a neat name to see included. And but like I said, overall, man, really like the roster. Can't not ask you about some of the X's and O's, Chen. From your viewpoint, maybe just give us your thoughts on the game plans and some of the schemes that Nate Mitchell and his staff are running, and what you liked. And I guess my other question with that is, is that what we can closely or somewhat expect to see with Gordy Herbert, coming up in the next window in July in Hamilton. Just talk about the schemes and what you liked from the coaching approach, man.
Yeah, I think for this window, I really liked kind of the game plan coming into the games. I think the one that we talked about against, or the defensive game plan against Kofi Coburn, definitely was impressive. Um, and then yeah, I think that there's a lot of kind of offensive sets that were being run for Marcus Carr to get downhill.
Yeah.
Kyle Wilcher kind of as a popper once he kind of sets the screen. Um, but yeah, I think I don't have a whole lot about what this might mean for the summer core, because I think it's always so difficult to figure that out, especially as I think X's and O's are always so tied to the player's strengths that you have.
Yeah.
And there's not been a lot of news about how Gordy wants to approach team building or the roster for this Canadian men's national team. So I think it's hard to say. But I think in watching kind of how Germany plays, there is kind of an emphasis, at least with that roster, with a very kind of 5-out offense, spread offense, where bigs that can shoot are highly valued. And that's why I think Kyle Wilcher is going to be playing some kind of role with the summer teams. Same with a guy like Kelly Olynyk.
Yes.
But
I'm glad you mentioned KO. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's Captain Canada, I guess.
Yeah.
Now that Melvin Edgins kind of aged out of the core.
Right.
But yeah, I think like it'll be interesting to see how Gordy Herbert ends up, or whatever kind of roster he ends up choosing in the end. Is it going to be more similar in configuration to the German teams that he won, at the highest level with? Or is it going to be a little different with, someone like Zach Edey and Kevin Gelly, who are both so dominant kind of interior presences, where, okay, we're not going to maybe rely on a 5-out as like our standard kind of alignment, where we're going to play 4-out, 1-in more. And I think those are definitely conversations that he's having with the coaching staff. And I imagine if Zach Edey is going to play, like that's definitely going to be what we see more of. But yeah, I think with these windows, because it's so short, it's always so difficult to kind of extract high-level ideas that they're trying to implement. But overall, I think, the coaching staff this time around, they did a great job in the limited time they had.
Yeah, I thought no, you nailed it, because it is difficult. I know it's kind of a loaded question. I mean, the third window coming up in July in Hamilton with the 2 games against Puerto Rico and Jamaica, like the personnel is obviously going to be very different. And I hope we get sort of a decent idea of a core piece, a core chunk of the roster, like the following summer at the actual World Cup. And, maybe they're aiming for, I don't know, let's just say 6 NBA guys in this window come, July. Like, it's hard to say, right? You have the 2 games in Hamilton with the idea that Shea tries to play and the other GTA guys possibly, and whatever Gordy thinks he wants to have a look at and see who wants to be a part of this. I agree with you on Wilcher as a big with length that can then shoot it. And I know I kind of shared it there on X, but Michael Grange had talked to Kelly Olynyk when the Spurs were in Toronto playing the Raptors, and Kelly wants to, be a part of this. He's been talking to Gordy, still feels like he can play and contribute, and feel like he's in a good place. So, probably see Kelly in Hamilton just to let everyone know I'm trying to do this. And he got a taste of the Olympics in Paris. He desperately wants to go to LA for them. And, he's just not getting minutes in San Antonio. That's really what it is. Not that he's not capable, but so it's going to be an interesting look come July in these windows. Sorry, that window there in Hamilton, just to say, who's showing up out of the NBA guys, who wants to do this. Give the coaching staff a look of what they think is possible, and So I'm looking forward to that. You might see me out in Hamilton. I've never been there, so good
Nice,
reason to pull
nice.
up. But yeah, just really cool spot for the team right now and for the program to be in 4-0 so far. And I feel like I'm comparing it to the last qualification process for the 23 World Cup, and I remember um, they moved into the November window in Edmonton. I was there. It was cold, man. And Venezuela had the whole passport issues and all that.
Right,
But
right.
that group was ready to get it done. They were in a really good position. Like Canada just dominated these windows, and they punched the ticket. And I can just see this moving in that direction where it's going to get done come November. And it's the depth of the program, man. It's just everyone willing to do this, and you know, kudos to the coaching staff too. Like Nate Mitchell's got to come uh, from China too, and everyone's willing to get this done, eh?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the last qualifiers they went 11-1, and
Right.
the one game they lost was to like Argentina on the road when they had
Yeah.
all of their like EuroLeague players, and Canada had already kind of qualified. So yeah, I mean the winter core again was such a huge part of that, and they've set Canada up well for success right now. Going 4-0. And it's not like, I think one thing to remember with these windows for the viewers or the listeners is that it's not like these games in July in Hamilton are like exhibition games or they don't matter. Even though Canada is, first in their group right now, and have already qualified for the second round. Every single game, the results move and transfer and carry over to the second round.
Right.
And wins now going 6-0 in the first window or the first round carries over. That record carries over to the second round. When you're crossing over with, for Canada, it's Group D. And there's again some kind of shockers over there in Group D with Uruguay kind of dominating Argentina.
Yeah.
And actually, funny enough, if you look at the kind of cross group rankings right now, Canada and Uruguay are both tied for 4-0, but they actually have a better point differential than Canada.
Okay.
I think that just speaks to like the depth of Group D versus Group B. But it's just a reminder that like these summer games, we are going to be integrating NBA players in, but they still need to produce results. And the winter core has done that. They've set the bar at a high place, and it's like they're passing the baton now to the summer core to follow up. And then also in that August window, and after I think a month and a half or 2 months after the July window, there's going to be another chance potentially for NBA players to play. I think I haven't heard if there are going to be any home games in that window yet.
Right.
But potentially, like, Canada has been put in a really good spot here, and they just got to continue to execute to get to the World Cup this year. Or
Yeah. Next summer. Yeah. No, I when they had the qualifier in Victoria in the summer of 22, and that was August against Argentina, like it was all business, man. This was not like some kind of exhibition game. Kelly was playing back in his home province, so that was kind of a highlight. But you know, it was full throttle, man. It wasn't like taking it easy. And Argentina made it close. And Argentina had some, like Carlos Delfino was, you know what I mean? Like they were trying to get this done. It was a tough matchup for them with Shea and some of the other guys, but that's what people need to realize is like, yeah, it could look like a homecoming type thing for the guys in Hamilton. It's not. They have to really execute and get it done and win by a big margin because it does set it up. And yeah, there's a celebration aspect and piece. Like, if we want to speak some things into existence, maybe Shea's celebrating 2-time MVP and maybe they run it back and win the championship again. You never know. But yeah, there is going to be a business approach to it. And it's also, like we've mentioned, Gordy's first run at this as head coach to, set some things in play, and we get a sense of what he's looking for and what he wants his roster to be. And um, I'm really excited to see who's there because that's going to tell you a lot about what player wants to be involved, if they think they have a shot, if the program maybe tell them they have a shot. But if there's a younger guy like Keyshawn George comes to mind, right? Where we saw him in the America. Um, he's had a bit of a struggle at times this year with the Wizards, but we obviously know what the capability is like. But is a guy like that going to be there in Hamilton, where he's like, I got to show them that I'm into this. I think that's going to dictate some things for sure. And um, I think if any other player in the league in the NBA is hungry to be a part of this, and they're trying to get a first crack at this, it'll be telling to see who's in Hamilton.
Yeah, I think the big one for me is going to be Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
We've never really seen him outside of that Olympic experience in 2024 in that summer. And even that we can say it was a very limited experience because it was the exhibition tour. We didn't get to see Jamal a lot. And then, the Olympic Games, I think obviously he played really poorly.
Right.
Kind of unexpected how poorly he was playing in Paris. And, obviously that, I think, his agent has talked about, how that kind of maybe had affected his contract status a little bit. Maybe he was a little hurt. I think there's a lot of kind of speculation going around about is Jamal ever going to play again for the national team? But yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the big interesting question because, we've also seen in the past with Gordy Herbert is he, with Germany at least, highly valued continuity, and he was okay with saying no to players that weren't ready to commit for the 3 summers back then. It was like their Eurobasket, then the World Cup, then the Olympics, and they left Isaiah Hartenstein at home through that whole run where they saw so much success. And what happens with Jamal Murray with Canada, right? I think he's had the best year of his career now that he's been fully healthy. And he's even talked about it himself, like how important that off-season break is for his own health as well. So
yeah,
I think I don't think you can fault Jamal for not wanting to play to get his like NBA career right and prioritize that. But I think that's going to be one of the big questions entering this summer window is who's going to be there. Specifically, is Jamal going to be there? I mean, he's on like the national team or the Canada basketball like promo material, which has been a sign in the past of guys who are going to play. But I think that's the big question for me, Jamal Murray. What's his availability going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, the off season with rest was crucial. He's talked about that. His camp has talked about that. The Nuggets have, and it's showing in his season, first time All-Star. So, and you correlate that to the previous off season with the Olympics, and and he wasn't fully healthy. So yeah, I mean, we've kind of joked about how, or not joked, but put it out there that Andrew Nembhard needs to be the guy next to Shea in the backcourt, and with Jamal playing as well as he has been this year, I mean, that might be a little tougher sell now, or you slot him in as the guy off the bench for offense or whatever Gordy and the staff think. But no, that's a great name to kind of project in terms of inclusion in Hamilton, and he's from close enough in Kitchener and whatnot, so maybe he will try to be there. If the Nuggets go deep in the playoffs this year, which they have the capability of doing, that's an issue in terms of Jamal being available. So, the Thunder have a deep run potentially in them. Now, I think Shea would probably play in Hamilton, but it's going to be interesting to see. I only mentioned Keyshawn because, he made the effort with the America Cup. The program wanted him there. That was something that was building. Uh, he had talked about that with Liban on Liban's podcast. So uh, can't wait to see sort of who's in that mix and who's ready to be a part of the third window, man, in Hamilton.
Yeah, I think another, just quickly to jump in here, was also, for at the America Cup training camp, at least when it was in Toronto at the OVO Athletic Center, I thought it was also really interesting that one guy that Rowan Barrett kind of mentioned was Zach Edey, even though, I mean, he was out due to, a lot of those ankle injury concerns last offseason. And
he's got another surgery coming too now.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. And I thought it was interesting that kind of Rowan Barrett kind of brought Edey's name up without any kind of leading on from any kind of questions or reporters as a guy that they were maybe interested in. And then now, with the news a couple of days ago that he's getting surgery again. I think Zach Edey is the ceiling raiser for the summer core. I think he's played very limited minutes this year as a second-year sophomore, but in those minutes he looked dominant as a defensive presence. And having him, I think, on the summer core team just completely changes the trajectory of the roster and their medal chances at the Olympics or the World Cup. I think if he's there, I think Canada has to be the second favorite behind America.
Right.
But that's another guy. He's had a lot of injuries, lower body injuries as a big, which is never the most encouraging, but really hope that he gets a chance to kind of suit up in these next two windows in the summer at least once.
Yeah, I just want to say with Edey, like now it's I feel for the young man because like now it's at the point like, okay, we got to be mindful of his career long term, and these lower body foot injuries and subsequent surgeries, and then now he does seem to be like a quick healer in a sense for a big guy. Some big guys don't quite heal as well, so maybe Zach has that going for himself too. But yeah, that's a massive player for Canada basketball moving forward into the World Cup in 27, potentially LA in 28, and time will tell. And we've been clamoring for the size factor for what feels like decades. But yeah, we need some real high end bigs. Zach fits that big time. Chen, man, anything else you want to add before I get you out of here? It's always great to have you pull up, man.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, I think congrats on the 100 episodes.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the Canada Hoops podcast, definitely an important part of covering the national team on the men's and the women's side. So, yeah, always a pleasure to come on. So, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, you're a guy, man. I mean, if we're talking the senior men's national team, we got to have you on. And everyone can find you writing for the Raptors Republic. Jonathan is a great follow on x.com. And he's always a friend of ours. And looking forward to the next window and, your future breakdowns, man.
Yeah, hopefully you'll come down to Hamilton and we'll both be able to catch up live.
Let's do it, man. I want to thank Jonathan Chen for pulling up on Canada Hoops. Thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for checking us out. Remember to download us, share us, keep supporting Canada basketball, and we will see you on the next episode.